Welcome back to the Ed Show. This is the story for the folks who take a shower after work. An oil spill shut down a major interstate highway, causing traffic issues for residents in Pacoda, Illinois today. Officials say a leak occurred in one of the lines at the holding area for a half a dozen major oil refineries who process crude. Now, this highway closure is an immediate impact of a spill, but an environmental impact can be long-lasting. A perfect example of that, of course, is happening in the Gulf of Mexico. 4 years after the Deepwater Horizon disaster, BP has been running television commercials saying that the Gulf is open for business. These ads are very misleading at best. BP officially ended its cleanup from the spill in June of 2013, but the condition of the Gulf Coast is far from clean. In 2013 alone, 4.6 million pounds of oiled material was collected out of the Gulf. That's right, 4.6 million pounds. Now, BP did not clean up after itself. Now it's trying to get money back. Get this. Now they're trying to get money back from businesses who claimed losses. BP wants a federal judge to order restitution for what the oil company says are hundreds of millions of dollars in overpayments. The greedy oil giant thinks it's owed money when businesses in the Gulf are still suffering. The largest shrimp buyer in Louisiana explained just how bad it is.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you got stuff like on 60 Minutes showing that people are collecting money. We haven't collected nothing since 2010. But what they're not showing you, they got documentaries like Vanishing Pearl that'll show that they paid people just $5,000 that made their living out the Gulf. It's a shame what they did. I mean, it's there's a lot of people suffering down there. Every day we got to see it. I mean, BP ought to be ashamed of themselves, and the government ought to be ashamed of themselves for allowing it to happen.
And, of course, the situation hasn't changed. Oil companies are trashing the environment and not cleaning up after their own messes. What other conclusion could we come to? Brent Coon, attorney, joins us again tonight here on the Ed Show. Brent, good to have you with us. This is utterly amazing that BP, record profits, money offshore, you go right on down the list. They are the corporate world, and they are claiming overpayments when businesses in the Gulf are still suffering financial loss because of the spill. Capsulize what is unfolding here for us, Brent.
You know, Ed, good question. First, there are probably 2 or 3 points to make there. First, from being on the show a number of times and all the commentators you've had before dealing with BP, they really should change their name to BS. Because we know in this case, and in the many cases we've been involved in before, BP has once again lied to the courts, they've lied to Congress, they've lied to the claimants and the victims, and they have repeatedly lied to the press about what's going on. And because they have so much money to engage in those practices and to lie to the press, most people do not know what's really going on because they tend to believe what is being reported by BP and what is basically bought and paid for advertising. So here's what we do know. We do know that BP announced a settlement 2 years ago. They have not paid 75% of the claims submitted in that process 2 years later. They have instead appealed those issues to the very Supreme Court you were talking about earlier, which is very conservative and which is very sympathetic to big businesses. While they have paid on a small portion of those claims, they've now gone back and filed motions with the original trial court to get the money back from the people they've already paid. So one, they haven't paid many people, and two, to the extent they have filed this crazy motion asking for their monies back. In addition to that, there's a separate settlement program that BP runs, and of the cases submitted there, tens of thousands, they paid 2. So what do you do with a company like that when our government continues to allow them to operate while they're a convicted felon? They were convicted felons of manslaughter for killing all those folks in Texas City. They were on probation for that when they blew up this rig. And yet our government still lifted the debarment and allows them to drill even today. Even while the Department of Justice is suing them, they're still allowing them to produce oil and make money.
And so, finally, Brent, what we're seeing here is a big corporation and multinational saying, we'll show you how deep our pockets are at the end of the day. We can beat the working guy. We can beat those families. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and we'll starve them right on out. Is that what's happening?
Well, sure. They've worn out everyone. They've worn out the court system. They've certainly worn out the claimants and discouraged them from even trying to pursue their claims anymore. And when you look at the mess they've left, we know that there's more than 1 billion pounds of this core exit mixed emulsified oil still in the Gulf of Mexico. Most of this oil by BP was deliberately driven down into the substrata, into the subsea and on the bottom of the ocean to get it out of the visibility of the media so they could hide and lie about how much was spilled. You may remember when they were testifying in Congress, they swore that it was only 1,000 barrels a day spilling. And in fact, it turned out to be over 50,000 barrels a day.
The story will continue. The environmental impact is a show in itself, and we're going to work right on down that road. This is the next big story that has to be uncovered. What is happening to our environment in the Gulf? Brent, Coon, it is great to have you with us tonight. Appreciate your help telling the story. Thanks so much. That's the Ed Show.